Alrighty. Well, I expect a few more people will come in, but we're just afternoon, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. This month's Your Hour with APA Virginia will be all about the FAICP nomination process, hosted by Lorna Parkins. And we also have some friendly faces with us, Julie Pastor and Glenn Larson, also FAICP members. And we will also be joined by Kurt, hopefully a little bit later, Kurt Christensen. I will be sharing some helpful links to our website and to the PDF, which will include all the information relevant in this webinar in the chat momentarily. I just wanted to run through some logistics. We really do encourage questions. This is meant to be, a Q&A heavy webinar. So our experts are here to help you. So if you want to place your questions in the Q&A box, that will help us keep track of all inquiries. But if there's any point in which there's a chance for any open-ended conversation, feel free to use the chat box as well. You can also use the chat box to direct message me if you have any logistical questions or any APA Virginia administrative questions. You can also use the raise hand feature to request to be unmuted, and if you would prefer to ask your question out loud. This webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to access the recording in the coming days on the APA Virginia YouTube page. I will also share that link in the chat. And I will be sharing our contact information for Lorna a little bit later on in a follow-up to all attendees if you think of any questions that you don't have an opportunity to ask today. But otherwise, thank you everybody so much for joining. I'm really appreciative for our hosts this afternoon, and I will hand it over to Lorna.
Thank you, Jillian. I'll bring up my slides. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So yeah, this is not a long presentation. I really tried to go through this from the perspective of an applicant and just talk about, kind of the who, what, where, when, and how. And then there are quite a few resources that they've been adding to, including a whole toolkit for the application process. And so hopefully that will, some of that material will really come in handy if you're thinking about looking into, applying to join the College of Fellows. So what is the AICP College of Fellows, right? Induction to the College of Fellows is the highest honor that the American Institute of Certified Planners bestows upon a member. It recognizes an individual's achievements as an outstanding planner who's made a significant contribution to the planning profession and society, and really multiple contributions. They're looking for planners whose contributions have extended beyond competency in normal professional planning activities and duties. And another way of putting it is that, they grant fellowship to planners who've achieved excellence in they call these the 5 areas of practice: professional practice, teaching, mentoring, innovation, research, and community service and leadership. And I guess that's actually 6 areas, but it doesn't, not all of them, but usually more than one in a person's career. So that's very broad. As you move through the criteria, it does get somewhat more specific and starts to become something that you could envision whether it applies to you or not. So the next thing to consider are the eligibility requirements for a nomination. So this is a threshold that you have to have been a member of AICP for at least 10 years. It is also the case that most people have more than 10 years of experience, but some people get their AICP later in their career, and the intent there was not to preclude people who have only had it, for 10 years. So so that's one, threshold criteria. You also have to be a member of AICP in good standing, and that's important, keeping up with your CM requirements and all that. But then really, sort of where the rubber meets the road is being able to demonstrate outstanding contributions reflecting innovation and excellence in the profession across the span of the individual's entire planning career. And these contributions must demonstrate that the planner has accomplishments above and beyond the usual competencies required in the individual's normal professional activities, roles, and achievements. And then there's a number of ways that may have happened or could be discussed and demonstrated with regard to a given applicant. But so again, so kind of moving our way down the funnel of what are they looking for? What are the requirements? That's sort of the next step, is you have to meet all three of these. And then before getting to the next level on that, I wanted to give you a picture of the overall process. So we're at the beginning of what takes about a year and a half from where we are today to the actual ceremony of becoming an FAICP. And the next 10 months are particularly critical. So starting out in the fall, one would apply for the chapter nomination. And there's another method to apply that I'll touch on, but what we're focused on today is applying through the chapter to be the chapter's nominee for the College of Fellows. So you start in the fall with there's a call for nominations out right now that describes what you need to do, and I'll touch on that in a moment. So that's between now and November 15th. And then between November 15th and the January, the early January board meeting, the chapter will select one or more nominees that the chapter will support. And then you really get into the hard part. Which is a period of time from about January through the end of May to prepare that nomination package. And I'm going to break that all down and talk about what that entails. And this timeline is a little bit different than ones we've had in the past because they keep moving up when it's due. So on this round, the packages are due July 31st. You can submit a pre-screening to APA up to July 11th. Which would give you a chance before the final application just to see if you're checking the boxes on the requirements before you actually submit. So, we would highly recommend doing that. So with that being the case, we're looking for the review package to be submitted to the chapter to me in June as a final draft. That allows us to have the chapter nomination letter prepared and for the nominee to continue to polish their application with the feedback that they receive from me and from the chapter leaders, and then that will give everyone time to get the July 11th deadline met and certainly the July 31st deadline. So it's a little bit of an iterative process. Through that period of time, through the winter and the spring, culminating in a finished package in July. So what are the primary criteria? The primary criteria are the drivers of what a nominee sort of builds their application or their nomination around. So what they're looking for, kind of drilling down into that broader statement of sort of those above and beyond accomplishments, are these 5 areas. And the first 4 are sort of different ways that a planner's career might, result in the planner excelling. And then the last one is really just kind of how you articulate that. So number 1, exceptional and sustained leadership resulting in a readily definable change to a place, people, or process. So that's one type of achievement. Innovation and excellence in creating consensus and support for a planning activity that has led to community improvements. Now, that's one I think that is very relatable to planners. But I have to say that's more, that's required, but it's not really sufficient in and of itself. You have to combine that with these other ones. The next one is really important: an evident legacy for their profession, community, and society, such as an impact that has created or shown potential to provide a benefit to their profession, community, or society. So there's a lot in that. We're going to unpack that a little bit. And then the last type of accomplishment is exceptional accomplishments in planning over the extent of their career or an extended period. So you really want to check all of these boxes in how you describe what you've accomplished in your career. And then finally, the clear significance of the nominee's unique role in the work must be mentioned throughout the nomination. So that's really more part of how you frame up these other 4 areas in your application. So the requirements and the advisory documents they have on this reference the primary criteria quite a bit, and so you'll want to print this or post it somewhere on your computer screen and really kind of internalize what are these key words, what are they really looking for. And honestly, the most important thing is legacy. In recent years, when it's really frankly become even more competitive in the field of applicants, and as we've talked with the leaders about what does it really take to have a successful applicant, the term legacy comes up a lot. You could almost add the phrase, and created a legacy to any of these statements in here to further clarify what it is that they are looking for. And so let's drill into that a little bit. So as I was saying, every word of the primary criteria matter. You have to fulfill all of them. So unlike that first list of the planning areas, you want to have multiple planning areas, but certainly not everybody has been a teacher, or if you've been a teacher, maybe you haven't done some of the other things. But the primary criteria is something you have to address all of. And ideally, again, multiple practice areas from that list. And then, while the criteria mention impact and they also mention legacy is the key. And so I just wanted to talk about sort of what's that difference, right? So when your work has an impact, you're directly affecting other planners and or a community, other planners through mentorship, teaching, and your activities and professional volunteering and development. And then the benefits are directly the result of your work. So that's an impact, and that's really important. But a legacy is sort of that next level. You're influencing the practice of planning through the work of the planners you impacted, through methods that you created that are applied by other people, and through the AICP-based standards or other outcomes. So in other words, you're impacting the profession in a meaningful way. And that is really the differentiator that the selection committees are looking for. So really think about that. Everybody, there are many planners who have done important things that have had an impact, but the question is, has your career gone on long enough? Has your work been such that you can also point to those legacy type outcomes? So then moving on from sort of what is the right stuff, what does it take to be a successful nominee? Let's pivot to the actual process of getting through the nomination. So these are the required elements of the nomination package. And the ones in purple are the ones that the nominee is primarily responsible for, or that are going to take up your time. The nominee is also responsible for the application fee and the headshot, but that doesn't take much time. The chapter is responsible for the nominator endorsement letter, and that's why we need the draft package early so that we can draft that letter and have it be very effective. But what the nominee really needs to spend their time on is a one-page narrative statement that lists, they're asking you to focus on 5 accomplishments that address the primary criteria. And you have some pretty strict requirements to articulate that on one page, including the five accomplishments. The next component of the application is what they used to call it an annotated resume, but now they're calling it the nominee story because they want a little bit more of a narrative approach to that. And I can show you what one looks like. But that is very strictly limited to 10 pages. And it has to go through, it has to include a variety of things, most of which are going to take up maybe 2 or 3 pages of that 10-page requirement. But most of that is going to be telling the story of your 5 accomplishments. And there's Kurt. I'm so glad you could join us. Thank you. And then another really important part of the application is the letters of support. I'll talk about that specifically in a few minutes, but yes, it says 10 and 10 is the way to go. And then the last thing is just a 100-word statement. That takes some effort to craft. It's probably better to do that later when you've got some good keywords that you can pull out. And that becomes sort of your, the thing that they post to your link on the FAICP website is how they introduce you in the ceremony and stuff like that. So it is an important piece of the package. But so those are all the things that go into a nomination package. And obviously the nominee story and the letters of support are the things that are really time consuming, but it is all framed up by this 1-page narrative. So that's kind of where you start. So where to start? The first step is to submit a nomination proposal to the chapter by November 15th, as I mentioned. And it's not a resume. It's a summary of how you meet the primary criteria in relevant practice areas with a brief summary of accomplishments. So we don't want, more than, 2, maybe 3 pages at the most. With that, it could be 1 page, keeping in mind that you're going to have to be able to articulate that in 1 page. And again, the foundation of all this is to identify the 5 main career accomplishments that are discussed in the guidelines and that go into that 1-page narrative statement. And so when you do that, moving forward into developing an application, that really is the foundation that around which you're going to organize the rest of the materials. You will need to list each relevant achievement and its specific innovative impact to communities and the profession as a whole, highlight the unique, sustained, and transformative impacts that were documented in the nomination package, and then list 5 distinct specific accomplishments, not skills, not specializations, but this is a thing that I accomplished with these, these results, again, striving towards that legacy statement.
And Lorna?
Yeah, sure, Kurt.
Yeah, and I don't know how to make this even more poignant is that 1-page statement or accomplishments will set the tone for the entire packet. And
exactly.
That it is the most important document in this packet because someone is going to review this and they're going to see that 1 page and they're going to say, okay, has this person really made legacy accomplishments or these major accomplishments? Or has this person not done that through the thing? It's kind of piques their interest. It's like the opening argument of a trial. So yes, I cannot state how important this is.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Yeah, everything else kind of flows from that. And you'll keep reworking it and polishing it as you go. It will be iterative, but that is absolutely the foundation. Okay. So then once you've identified those 5 accomplishments, your task is to tell the story. And so there are variations on how to organize that 10-page section, but the 5 career accomplishments need to be very clear and well substantiated. And then in addition to that, you have to include your education, your career path, kind of the different jobs you've had in your career, professional activities and leadership, honors, and relevant leadership roles in public service are all included in there. So it's sort of like these items in the list are kind of the bookends. you typically start with your education and career path, and then you finish with professional activities. These are kind of listed things, and then everything in between is the story of your 5 accomplishments. And of course, it's very relevant to weave in the details of, you know, what you did in different positions as it relates to those accomplishments, what you've done in professional leadership, etc., as part of those accomplishments. You need to be clear what areas of practice are included. And again, you want more than one to be addressed. And because again, it's like a rubric, and they're looking for all of those keywords from the areas of practice from the primary criteria to be in there. Then what has to be sort of hand in glove with your narrative statement is your 10 letters. You have to choose letter writers that can substantiate the key points that you make regarding your accomplishments, particularly things like innovation, consensus building, impact, and legacy. So again, you'll really, as you're framing up those 5 accomplishments, really be thinking about who was there with me, who can speak to what happened here that really demonstrates what my career and, you know, my effect on the planning projects or the professional activities that I've done has had an impact. Because it's one thing to say this has a legacy, it's another thing for your mentee to write a letter and say, this is how this person affected my career, and here's, you know, the planner that I am today. So think of it like a grant proposal. That was a suggestion I heard recently. Again, focus on the keywords and the primary criteria and make sure that you use them throughout the narrative.
Lorna?
Yes.
On the letters specifically, and this is something that will trip people up, is that you need to tell your letter writers, you need to see the letter before they finalize it. Mm-hmm. Because it can't be just a letter, and you'll get into that, but you need to remember to tell those people that you're going to need to see them before they finalize it, because the letters are going to go back and corroborate all the stuff that you said. And they need to be, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but they need to be as strong, and the words that are used are important for people to come back and read when the people that are reviewing them read them. And if it means having to go in and help a person edit a letter for you, which is uncomfortable, it is so uncomfortable, you need to remind yourself that they're looking for certain things to be included in this letter, and it's important that they all get included in the letter. You know, what you did, how you did it, and what your part was, and what the significant was. It's repetitive in all of these things you're going to be turning in.
Right. It's like the proof, right? You're making the statement of the accomplishment and the effects of your accomplishment, but having somebody else verify that, like you said, using the same words, making, you know, hitting the center of the dartboard, if you will, of really demonstrating that the impact you're sort of claiming in your application has really happened. And as you know, especially with innovation and with legacy, those are things that almost are more convincing if it comes from someone else.
I'd just like to add some.
Sorry.
Oh, I'd just like to add some additional suggestions about letters.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Start the request process, at least 2 months ahead of time, 3 months ahead of time?
Right away, right away.
Yeah, we may be planners, but a lot of people really procrastinate on requesting letters and answering the letters as well, or answering our requests. So I would say 2 or 3 months at least ahead of time, as early as possible, certainly.
Well,
I think you should be thinking about them literally right away. I wanted to just piggyback on a couple of the points that have just been made. First of all, is in the picking of the people, you know, you need to pick people not just from a cross section, but ones that are not going to just say the same thing. They need to be ones that are going to represent a cross section of types of people, whether they be public officials or mentees or people that you work for or whatever. That's really important. And then as Glenn was starting to say, the whole idea of getting to folks early and staying on them. And then picking up where Kurt was going with is helping them write the letters, because you know what they need to be focused on. And oftentimes, as uncomfortable as it is, they really want the help because they want to be helpful and they really want you to succeed. So there's not too much pride there in asking to, go the extra mile. But I can't emphasize enough, you should be thinking about who you would ask to write the letters before you even decide to do this, because that's going to be a key element of this whole process.
Yeah, and I think I'm building on that. What I suggest to people is they're writing their accomplishments down, and it could be more than 5 that you put in the initial grouping. But on the side, I'm writing down who can write about this accomplishment and from what aspect they're going to hit it from, because you might have 2 people write on the same accomplishment, but they might be completely from different points of view. And I know, and I think since Julia served on the selection committee for that, another thing that I've heard, because I have not, is that they love letters that come from the citizen, the person, the everyday person that may have been impacted by what your legacy is, like, a champion of affordable housing, or, a champion that helped a program that might have been started in a community or in your firm that helped out disadvantaged people establish businesses. And think back into those things like, okay, who can I have write me a letter that was in the community that was impacted by something that I accomplished and helped that community move forward. Those types of letters are invaluable because it talks to the people that are impacted the most by what you've done.
Thank you. I really appreciate all those pointers. And hopefully for those of you who are thinking about this, it's getting you thinking. So just kind of quickly, a lot of this has been covered, but you need to have, the requirement is 5 to 10. Definitely aim for 10. And by aiming for 10, request at least 12 starting out, maybe more, because some people won't respond. Some people will give you something that's just too broad. So you carefully follow the guidelines and what you request them to do, and give them the guidelines for the letter as well. They make that as an attachment you can send. And then in your email or however you request the letter, you should already know, and I have a little diagram of what Kurt was just talking about a moment ago, you have an idea of what it is you want them to substantiate. And so tell them that when you initially request it. And then I think we've talked about sort of how to craft that cross-section of people, and then make sure you allow time for them to send you the draft and let them know, because you have to check the requirements. I had a couple people respond who forgot to say who they were. They just wrote it about, what they knew about me. And it is important for them to explain who they are and how they know you before they get into whatever they're going to say about your career. So it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg kind of situation, but this is just kind of a dummy outline. You've got your accomplishments. Each of them has certain components to it. How did you start? What was the innovation? What were the results? Etc. And then, as Kurt was saying, then think about within each of those who's out there that you're still in touch with, or you could track down, who can substantiate that from their perspective. And so it could be people you've worked with. It could be people that mentored you in or out of your workplace, people that were mentees of yours who worked on the project at the time, for example, and understand, how those methods became standard on other projects or something. And then people like, you know, your department director, who maybe wasn't your supervisor, or the planning commission member, or you know, somebody who's in an official capacity, and then also people who, you know, citizens as well, or stakeholders who were sort of even more directly affected, and less within that kind of bubble of people who are directly involved in the planning profession. Those are very important to include. So this is just to help you visualize what we're talking about, but it's very generic. And again, from the very beginning, as you think about accomplishments, ask yourself who was there, who could talk about this, because that really is such an important part of strengthening your application. And just know that it does take a village to get one of these done. So for chapter nominees, APA Virginia will provide an FAICP mentor for consultation and review of the nomination package components. So once, you know, if we accept you as a nominee, I'll be gathering up volunteers to help be, you know, fairly hands-on with helping each nominee develop their application. And then I'll be sending reminders on timekeeping. You know, if there's only 1 or 2 applications, I'll definitely do a read through as well as we get closer to the end. And then, as we've discussed, for a successful application, you need the colleagues, past mentors, to inspire you, help recall your impacts, some of them to write letters. So in other words, like, you may have a sense of what you did, but you'll want to talk to people and say, you know, what do you think about this? Do you recall this? Do you think this stands out in some way, et cetera? So spend some time, you know, planning to engage with folks that know you and your accomplishments. Another really important member of the village is a colleague or a friend who can do a fresh eyes review of your draft, because you're going to be spending so much time in this document, you will not see the forest for the trees, you know, once you're nearing the end. And so you need not only the person who's helping you, you know, from the chapter, but another person in your life, professionally or otherwise, who can do a really fresh eyes review of the final draft, a good editor. And then also, if formatting isn't your strength, you definitely want to line up some help to get it formatted nicely. You know, they encourage you to include kind of a table of contents that becomes a header for each section as you go through it. All of those little touches that make it easy for the committee members who are reviewing these to see and tell your story from your application are just so important. So so it does take a village.
Hey, Lorna, just one thing, like, I can tell you about having somebody review it. That is really important, because what you see and what you know in your head that you've written might not always be what's actually on the paper. And having a person that knows you is good to review it, but having somebody that knows you but not in this capacity. And one of my best reviewers when I did my application was the planning commission attorney that we had. Knew me, knew what I did for the city and whatnot, but he was really good at narrowing stuff down. You don't need to, these are too many words, you don't need to do this, you know, kind of thing. And the thing I was also going to tell you is you need to listen to people. Listen to what they're telling you. That's one of the things that when you go into this process, you've got this mindset of what you think this process is going to be and how you're going to approach it. But your mentors and some of the people that will work with you, you need to listen to them on what's the best approach to move forward. Because we've all been there. We've all done it. And each cycle is different and the requirements are a little different. So using my application to as a format for your application would not be a good thing, because my application is much different the way it was required than it is now. But the people that are reviewing the applications, Lorna and Julie and Glenn and myself and some others in the chapter, we've been through it. We've been through cycles with other people, and we kind of know what we're talking about on how you should approach your application. So, just make sure that you listen. Glenn and I know this firsthand.
Those are great pointers. Thank you so much, Kurt. Yeah, it is. Every way you can think of, this is a very humbling process because, it's out of everyone's comfort zone, I think, to think about your career in this way. And then as you move through it, you've really got to listen to the advice you're given. You really need to, to engage the people who can support you with the letters. All of that is it's a very oddly humbling experience. Glenn, did you want to add a point?
Lorna, I really agree that it is a very humbling experience, but I also stress that you cannot be humble when you write this nomination.
It's a narcissistically humbling experience.
I hate to say it, but it's all about you. I struggled with that, as my colleagues know, and it really does take. It does take. You've got to put your humbleness off to the side as you put together and construct your fellows nomination. It's collaborative is an important concept, but you've got to emphasize your leadership in that collaboration.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the last criteria. Go ahead.
It's a little bit of an out of body experience kind of thing. You just have to go for it. I just want to. I totally agree with what both Kurt and Glenn are saying. I don't want to come across overall though that people shouldn't be going for this. Part of it is also the humble part means that, wait a minute, maybe you do have some what it takes, but don't be shy, don't be intimidated by this. We want you to try for it, and we're not going to let you. We don't want you to not succeed. So if it comes across that you're not selected or whatever, don't give up. It's part of the process, and you probably have better than you think credentials to go forward, and because of who we are, we're just so humble. But I don't want to come away from this thing discouraging everybody from trying.
That's a great point.
But it is tough. It is really tough, and you have to be committed to doing it because it takes time. And as I said earlier, hanging on those would-be letter writers is tough because they are so important to this process, but they can be elusive, and you just have to stick with them. So there's a lot that goes into it, but in the end of the day, I think all three of us would say after we were selected, it was the most incredible moments of our professional careers. And it was worth it. It was worth all the agony and that it appears to have in this process. But in the end of the day, it really was both humbling and incredibly rewarding.
And validating. Once you've completed your packet and you read it, you kind of are a little blown away by look at what I've accomplished, what the impacts I've had. And you might not think that you've had that, but at the end of the day, you really have. And it's not something that can be rushed. But yes, I agree. An amazing experience.
It's funny because a few minutes before this webinar started, in my haste, I pulled up my nomination on my other computer, and I was looking at it, and I'm saying to myself, gosh, I really did accomplish a lot. That was really kind of a good feeling. So certainly this process is one that takes significant dedication. But there are so many rewards that can result from it, not just being selected as a fellow, but just getting an acknowledgement of the work that you've done throughout your career, getting the support of your colleagues, and having it all come together. It's a special thing.
Yeah, it's a very unique journey, and it is. I appreciate everything you all are saying about how rewarding it is. And I've had some people ask me, well, sort of like, well, why would I do it? And so those are all good reasons. In other words, sort of taking a look at your career and going through this process to gain some perspective on it. It's also the case that FAICPs are a resource. We call upon FAICPs to help with certain aspects of chapter development, professional development, including the process every other year going through development of applications. So if you it's not just for you, it's also it's really a benefit to our profession. That's one reason that the Virginia chapter has really had a push in the last 10 years to encourage applicants and to show that in Virginia, we have the top caliber of planners here. So so in terms of resources, you'll have this in the PowerPoint or the PDF that's being sent out. The website is here. For whatever reason, the toolkit is not posted directly on that website. So I've linked it here, or just know that if you just search FAICP toolkit on the planning.com website, planning.org website, you'll get to it. So the guidelines are critical. You're going to read them at least 8 times, maybe more. And all the components of the letter requirements and everything are linked to that. But in the toolkit, you've also got some additional resources. You've got sample schedules, sample communication. Some of what they have on there is from our chapter, which is nice to see. Some tips on managing the nomination process, example nominations. There's 2 or 3 videos there as well that kind of, similar to what we're doing right now, kind of walk you through the process. And there's some Q&A within those. And I pulled out one of the tips from the toolkit is this point about addressing all the criteria, and then learning about the process through this Q&A that they posted on the website as well. So really encourage you, even if you're just thinking about it, check out these resources, look at example nominations, and give it some thought as to whether you would be interested. And then again, the first step is to submit a nomination proposal to the chapter by November 15th. And then this is the overall calendar summary of the steps. So with that, we want to do a quick poll of those of you attending and find out people's level of interest. So go ahead. So take a look at this poll and please fill it out so we can gauge the level of interest out there in today's participants. And so, Jillian, whenever it looks like we've got somewhere, close to 10 or 11,
Yep.
or however many participants we have.
Alrighty,
Okay.
It looks like we have the most we're going to get in.
And there we go. Okay, so 2/3 said, oh boy, okay, nobody put their hand up for the class of 2026, but 2/3 expressed interest of those who responded, maybe a future class, one not interested, one not sure. So, so we'll, if you're inspired though, that you think of a colleague as you listen to this information, I encourage you to reach out to them as well. Certainly, you'll need to get to a point where you feel that you could meet those primary criteria. Maybe you're not as far along in your career yet, but it's something certainly to aspire to and to be aware of as you move forward. Julie, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just wanted to make one other comment. And this isn't, again, not to dissuade people from doing it, but if there are other means to get to nomination.
Thank you.
You can, maybe some of you are into other divisions of APA, so you can go through their process. They also do nominations. It's not just the chapter. And then if you're not either way, or maybe you're new to Virginia, or your career has spanned different jurisdictions, you might want to go the path of having 10 AICP members do your nomination. So there are other ways to do this in addition to the chapter, but the chapter is definitely the most prevalent way to go. And I think it's really important too, because especially, we're Virginia people, and we want to encourage Virginia people to be, get their due. So we really do look to participation in the chapter, and I think that's important, that we make nominations that are for people who have really been involved in the chapter and that kind of thing. So I think you also had it on one of your slides, Lorna, but back to the letter writers, because that's a really important thing, is get to know your FAICPs in the chapter.
Right.
Or maybe FAICPs from other chapters, but getting them as a letter writer is a good thing. And I know in my case, I had a couple. I don't know what the situation was with, I know a couple had individual ones, but I think that's also really important.
Yeah. But make sure that they know who
Know
you
you,
are.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Having an FAICP behind your name doesn't mean you're going to be a good letter writer for somebody that doesn't know you.
That's why I meant to get to know
Yes.
FAICPs.
And
Yes.
that was something that was emphasized in the toolkit is don't reach out to someone because of their prestige. Reach out to people that really know you and what you've done in your career. That's the better choice.
And just as a side note, I had no one in my letters that were FAICP. So
I had
none of
one.
my letter writers were I had 3 or 4 AICP members, maybe 5 AICP members, but none of the others, no one was an FAICP. And I knew lots of them. One of the people I reached out to and asked for a letter, but the person didn't know me as well as the 10 letters that I finally ended up selecting. So, be very, like Julie said, be very prepared to look at people that are going to actually know you and know what your impacts are. That will make all the difference in the world.
So the first question that was posted in Q&A is there a way to do a one-on-one discussion with one of the chapter folks to do a feasibility analysis before deciding to apply? And I would say, so email me if that's what you're asking. Sort of writing the chapter nomination letter is a way to do that, but obviously that's a little bit more indirect. So I would say, like, if you know somebody who's an FAICP, reach out to them, or again, reach out to me, and either I'll try to help you or I'll connect with someone who can help you do that early assessment. So I think that's a good idea.
More than happy to help as well.
Thanks, Kurt.
Been there, done that with many people that have went through this process.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm definitely available to, take a call.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. So yeah, I strongly encourage you to reach out. Again, you can go through my email address for the chapter is provided if that's the easy way to reach out, and I'll connect you with someone. And then somebody noted they're considering starting the process for a colleague. And so we're looking to lobby them to get started through this information. So that sounds great. And just, let us know if you need anything else.
Yeah, if you know people that you think are in that position of being, somebody that stands out in your mind, and they might not think they are, give us their names. Send those names to Lorna, because we can reach out to them and we can be persuasive. More so with them, because I'm not as familiar with many of the Virginia chapter members, but it is important that we get names.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kurt. And we do, we think about that as well, and kind of among ourselves kind of, make an effort to reach out to folks that we've thought of. But I'm sure there are many eligible people out there that we haven't necessarily interacted with. So anybody supporting in that way is really very much appreciated. So I think we've addressed the questions. Jillian put my email address in the chat, and it's also in the email blasts that are going out for the nomination process. And any other questions or comments from anybody? All right, I think Jillian has some closing items for the webinar, and I thank everyone who participated. I really thank Kurt, Glenn, and Julie for joining me in helping get this information out to our members. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'll just echo that. I mean, I think this was incredibly insightful, and I know our members sincerely appreciate all the resources that you've offered, including being a resource yourself. So thank you very much. A follow-up email will be going out to all attendees in the coming days, as I had mentioned earlier, which will include the recording link, the PDF, which is also in this chat, Lorna's email, and a few other tidbits that will be helpful. But otherwise, I just want to say thank you so much to all of our speakers this afternoon, and folks who joined us. I hope that this will lead to a few nominations.
Thanks, everybody.